Hi, I'm Martha. Welcome to my sewing studio. Today I'm answering a question I get a lot. How do you wash your handmade clothes? I get asked this question pretty consistently, and it's usually on any garment that has an heirloom sewing technique. I love sewing fussy garments, and it clearly piques people's curiosity. How do you launder them? So I'm gonna wash some clothes today. I'm gonna show you them before. I'm gonna talk through how I launder them, how I prepare them to be washed, and then how I wash and dry them. I think this is really straightforward. I actually think it's really funny to even make a video like this, but I do get asked enough that clearly people are curious. Let me show you the garments I'm going to launder. Up first, I have this lovely blouse. It is sewn out of Liberty Tanalon, and this uses a vintage pattern. If you've seen the purple dress I recently posted on Instagram, this was my wearable muslin for that. So it's using the same vintage simplicity pattern, and I've used a lot of the same techniques on here. This dress features ruffles, pin tucks, ties down the center, piping. Piping is actually the thing I'm most concerned about laundering, and we'll get into that. And then this box pleat trim. If you saw the first video I ever posted here on YouTube, it's how to make box pleat trim. So if this was something you were curious about, today we'll answer how we can wash it. So I'm gonna show you the inside of this garment as well so that you can see how this was attached. One thing that's important to note about a lot of these heirloom techniques is that you're using a crisp, thin fabric, and then you're pressing it very hard. I always emphasize how much you need to press with heat. So you're using a really hot iron, and you're not pushing your iron back and forth, you're pressing it, you're putting pressure. When you press things like that, you're forcing the fibers of your fabric into that position, and it kind of creates a memory. If you think of like a wire that holds its shape, even when you're trying to unfurl it, it's the same thing. It's gonna kind of want to return to this shape regardless of what happens to it. So these tucks might move around. They might start to stand up, and it is possible for them to go the other direction, but for the most part, they're going to want to lay the way that they've been pressed. And these might need a little bit of ironing after they've been washed. Like, I don't think it's gonna be anything crazy. To me, that's really not something to worry about. Piping is a little bit of a concern to me because the cord inside of the piping can shrink. It is cotton, and I find it often shrinks. I pre-wash it in boiling hot water. Like, I literally put it in boiling hot water, but I sewed this a few years ago, and I have no idea if I did that, so we're gonna find out the hard way. If it shrinks, it can cause everything to buckle because the piping inside of here is going to shorten, and we can, when it's wet, stretch it back out, and that might sort of repair it. So I'm thinking ahead, that is an issue I might encounter. And then the box pleat trim, I know that this was a big concern for people, but if you look at how it's constructed, if you watch my previous video, and if you look at these close-ups here, there's nowhere really for this fabric to go other than the way that it is. It just is gonna wanna return to this shape. It might need a little bit of forming with my fingers when it's damp, but we'll take a look when we get there, okay? The second garment is this blouse. Now this is also Liberty Tanalon, but it's a little bit crispier and crunchier. I did make a whole video of myself sewing this, so if that's not posted yet, it will be posted soon. This is the Tilly and the Buttons Marnie blouse, and I think it's such a great pattern. I did a full review, and I really do recommend it. It has these undulating tucks. So these are tucks that have been sewn down, and again, nowhere else for this fabric really to go, and it's gonna have that memory from being pressed. So I actually think this is gonna fare very well in the laundry, but you know, we're still gonna toss it in there and see what happens. Okay, so now that we've reviewed the details and we've kind of thought about what might happen here, I'm gonna show you exactly how I prepare these garments, and we're gonna put them in the washing machine together. All right, I'm starting with this blouse because the laundering for this one is going to be very straightforward. The first thing I'm going to do is turn it inside out. This does have a button closure, so I'm just going to button it closed, and that's it. I feel ready to put this one into the laundry. This garment obviously has quite a few more techniques, and there's sort of more that could go wrong. So here's how I'm going to prepare this one. I would like for these cords to be relatively free during the laundry. I don't want them in a bow shape because that's kind of got a knot in it. That being said, I do want this remaining closed. Having all of your closures closed prevents anything from being like pulled apart. For example, this vulnerable area could kind of get pulled, so I want to keep these closed. But what I'm gonna do is just untie that and leave them sort of long, and I'm gonna tie a very loose slip knot. Here we go again, and I'll do that down here as well. By doing that, these ties have a chance to relax. I was talking about fabric having a memory, and you can see how these kind of remember being in a bow, and I would just like these to have a little bit more freedom. Okay, that was easy. Now I'm going to turn this garment inside out. Turning things inside out reduces the amount of friction and rubbing that can happen on the face of your garment. So this garment has hand sewing that's kind of loose. It's more like basting that's on the inside. So this is also vulnerable to getting pulled on or tugged or snagged on something. So I'm going to take this and kind of loosely ball it up and slip it inside one of these delicate garment wash bags. I chose a size where the garment has enough space to move freely within the bag. It's not restricted at all. It's still going to get enough water and movement and agitation, but it's not so loose that it's equivalent to being out in the open of the washing machine. So these two are going to go in the washer now. Let's do it. I actually never anticipated that we would shoot here in my laundry closet, but here we are. It's not a beautiful part of my home, but it's functional and I love it. Here's what's going to happen. This shirt's inside out. This one's in its bag. I'm gonna wash it on cold and I'm gonna do a quick wash. Now, my machine has a delicate cycle, but I prefer the quick wash. Just through trial and error of my machine, I find that the quick wash is a little more delicate than the delicate wash. Every machine's different and this machine's like 20 years old, so you kind of just have to gauge what's best on your machine. But I'm gonna use cold water. I'm gonna put some detergent in here, but just a little bit. I used all free and clear. We'll come back in 36 minutes. All right, the machine has finished its cycle, so let's take a look. It pretty much looks as expected. I'm gonna take these out, and since this room is very, very cramped, I'm gonna bring them back to my studio and we will sort of open these up and have a look. Okay, here we go. This is damp and it is a little sort of like crumpled looking, I guess you could say, which I think is typical of wet clothing, but everything looks as expected to me. I'm gonna go ahead and turn this right side out. And the first thing that I want to do is sort of shake it to get any big wrinkles out. Just like that. This is something I would do with pretty much any of my clothes, not just handmade clothing. Everything really looks the same here. For this one, I'm gonna dry this on a hanger. And we have one room in our house that's just very warm. So I'm going to hang it in that room because it will dry a little bit quicker back there. But honestly, like really doesn't look any worse for the wear. All right, here's the one we've all been waiting for. I will say the top feels like a little bit crumpled up in here, but not too bad. I would say if anything, this one came out more crumpled from being in the bag. You know, it was restricted in there, so you can see the fabric is kind of crumpled. And again, if you just sort of like gently give it a few tugs along the grain line, like just pulling it on the grain, it flattens it right back out again. As I'm doing this, I have to say I find this to be very normal care for my clothing, and I realize a lot of people literally just throw things in the washing machine and dryer, and that might be all that you have time for, and I totally get it. Heirloom techniques might not suit your lifestyle if you hate doing laundry. I guess I'll say that. I really enjoy hanging things on my clothesline in the summer. I don't mind hand washing things. I don't mind blocking a sweater. All of that stuff is sort of soothing to me, so to each their own. Okay, and now let's have a look. Okay, first things first, I don't think that my piping has shrunk, but you can see that these areas with piping, these seams with piping, will benefit from just a stretch to sort of return it to its shape. I'm holding the ends while I tug on them, and just gently. You're not trying to break anything here. Okay. You can see that this stitching looks great, no damage. So now for the big reveal. Everything is laying as you would expect it to, but the fabric's a little bit rumpled. And as for the trim, it really just looks the same. So just like with the other one, I'm gonna go ahead and hang this on a hanger in a warm room in my house, and we will look at this in the morning, give it its ironing that it needs. It's the next day. I've brought my blouses back to the studio. They are dry. They're honestly probably ready to be worn just like this. They look great, but we're gonna take a closer look, and I am going to iron a few details just to freshen them up. I feel like you actually can't even tell that I washed this. It does look a little bit less crispy than it did before. So I'm gonna iron this one, but probably just gonna take a few minutes. And honestly, you could wear this. It's ready to be worn. I'm so excited to show you this one because it laundered beautifully. And as you can see, it pretty much looks the same. It really does. This kind of collar wants to stand up, so it is standing up, but because it had sort of the weight of dampness, it pulled itself down and it dried like that. You can see it's like a little rumpled. So I'm gonna give that a press, just pushing everything directly up, and then it will stand up crisply when I wear it. These tucks are slightly rumpled, and actually, if anything, I think it's the thread that needs to relax, and the heat of the iron will relax it. And then this is obviously the most exciting part. The box pleat trim looks exactly like it did prior to going into the laundry. I'm very pleased. And the other thing is, people keep saying, oh, how would you iron it back into place? But if you look at this, this is 5/8 inch wide. There's no iron that could do anything to this. If, for example, they came out of the wash a little bit mangled, you could just sort of pinch them and form them into place with your fingers, and then they would dry, you know, in the position that you fiddled them into. So this one, I'm also going to iron a few areas. Once again, you could wear it like this. I think it's absolutely fine to wear something fresh out of the laundry looking like this. I'm mostly gonna iron the body of it and these seams and the hem. And then I think it's gonna look absolutely perfect to wear. I know a lot of people don't like to iron their clothes. And like I said, I actually don't even think this one needs it. I just like my clothes to be ironed. And I enjoy ironing, so to me it's not this terrible chore. She just looks lovely. She does, she looks lovely. Ready to go out. Up next, not much to do here. The main thing that I wanted to iron on this one is the yoke, specifically these little tucks. One thing I didn't mention before is that the facings did not move. Sometimes facings go all crazy when you wash things, especially if you don't have the best interfacing in there. It wasn't an issue, so this really did launder very well. I'm gonna do this ruffle now. And I'm just pressing it flat and up, that's it. And the thing about the ruffle is it has seam allowance inside of that facing and the facing. So I'm pressing all of those layers at the same time because they all act together to help this ruffle stand up. Okay, you can see already it's really just standing up. Good as new, maybe even better than new, honestly. Cute. All right, let's take a close-up look at these and then we're gonna be done.